citizen. I actually was the one who found engagement with your classroom. And I'm standing over here going, hallelujah, yay, right. Because all of those things are things that we wanted to convey to the teacher. And I had written down what I was going to say about what's happening in my building. But I'm not going to go through that because you've already heard it. But what I want to tell you is I am a researcher. When I took the job as instructional coach, that was part of it. I'm not an expert. So I had to learn to be an expert. And so this is part of my research. The first page is from a group called Achieve the Core, and it's headed up by Jason Zimba, who is one of the writers of the Common Core, and he has also been part of Engage New York. So there is information in here about those instructional shifts that we were talking about rigor. There's 3 things that have to be in every lesson in order for it to be rigorous. It has to have conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, and application. And I feel like Engage New York does. And when I hear these teachers talking about using effective teaching practices in their classrooms, that's what we wanted to happen as coaches. That's what we still want to happen. We don't want to tell the teachers, when we said fidelity, we wanted them to use the materials, but we want them to use good instructional practices. We don't want teacher A to look exactly like teacher B. What they've been talking about is moving from concrete to representational to abstract. And I will tell you, at the 5th and 6th grade level, we're still doing that. We have students who still need the concrete, students who need the representational, and students who can do the abstract. So we're still doing all of those things. Now, at 6th grade, it shifts. 6th through 8th grade is focused on ratios and proportional reasoning. And so there's a shift, and the instruction doesn't look exactly the same, but it has all those same components in it. The second page is the standards of mathematical practice. Those are what we want kids, the habits of mind that we want kids to have, and we want those in every lesson. Not every one of them in every lesson. 1 and 6, persevering and precision, should be in every lesson, but then other ones will be in different lessons. The mid-module assessment for 6th grade is in there with the rubric. I just thought you'd like to see what that looks like. And then there's an article by Kathy Seeley, who is a former president of NCTM. And this is, I listened to her in Orlando, and she has 2 books that have messages. If you really want parents to understand the Common Core and what's happening today, they need this book. It's written to them. So.
I'm sorry, what was the title again?
This one is called Smarter Than We Think. The other one is called Faster. Something faster.
Faster than smarter.
Yeah, faster than smarter. Questions?
I teach 8th grade at Forest Good, which my students hate math. And instead of being excited about getting 3 right more, they look at the problem and go, this is too hard. That's what they do. I told them I was going to start giving them the attention, but they didn't. It shifts a little bit at the middle level from the hands-on manipulative concreteness of the elementary, early elementary. That's not a bad thing. I tell my students all the time that we're now in grown-up math. So go ahead and use your, and I saw the kids doing this the other day. I went, what are you doing? And they said, well, I'm using my piano fingers. And I went, okay. I had no clue what it was. They were counting on their fingers. I don't mind if they count on their fingers. I would rather them do it in their brain. But they can't get there. What I am finding at our level with the Engage New York is the students are no longer asked to find a right or a wrong answer. The fact that they know a process is what is more important. We still work on facts. We don't have the fluency piece in our lessons and modules that I wish we did. But the fact that a process that can be applied to a similar problem is what's important, is that that is what leads them to taking the information that we have in our module and applying it to something else 3 lessons down. If they can recognize that it is, in math we do the same thing over and over and over and over again. We use different numbers and we apply it in a different situation. And if they can recognize that it is the same process, then they will be more productive and they will know what to do when they don't know what to do. If they're looking at a problem and they don't know what to do, they can go back to something that flies into their brain to try. And that will get them started along the path to solve the problem. What I'm finding is that we had at Horace Good, I think Brad, we have 15 math teachers. And by the end of the first week, he was afraid we were all going to be in his office and quit. We took our Engage New York and it said 5 minutes here and 2 minutes there and 3 minutes there and 6 minutes here. And it takes 45 minutes to get through a lesson and we have a 43-minute class period. And we didn't know what to do. We tried to cram it all in there. And it's 50 miles to Dodge City, but did you ever notice it takes an hour to get there? And it doesn't matter. I added up the time and I had 43 minutes. And my class was over and there was still 7 minutes left on my timer. I asked the kids, I said, what did we do? We lost time somewhere. And we were all so very, very frustrated. The kids were frustrated, we were frustrated. The kids, bless their hearts. They sat, they did everything we wanted them to. And on the 3rd day, and I wasn't the only one that this happened to because we had a math meeting and other teachers said the same thing. I finally had a girl raise her hand and go, Miss, would you just stop? And I said, okay. Why? I'm looking at the timer. And she said, I have got to ask a question. And they were under the impression that there was no time for questions. And I said, okay, let's ask a question. And she asked a very well-phrased question that I know other people in the class were asking themselves as well. And so when the student said, I need to have more, I, similar to what Nate did, just stepped back and I said, okay, I turned off the timer. And I said, okay, how many more do we need? And the answer of the students in that class ranged from 3 more to 6 more. We started with 3. I asked the kids that said they needed 6 more examples. And they said, no, 1 more. And we got it in less than 6. It didn't take us 6. But we then, as a math department, came together and decided that we needed to put the timer away, that the script was important, the time was important, and with fidelity we had to do that. But we couldn't make it work. We were doing our students more damage. So we relaxed, we stepped back. We're doing more examples. We're doing more, the students are doing more talking, they're doing more asking, and it has worked out better. Now, I gave my mid-module assessment last Friday too, and I had to give it back to the students today and give them some guiding questions and ask them to do it again. This is a big shift for kids. Not only am I interested in them doing math correctly, and is the module and the lessons wanting us to do math correctly, but they're also wanting us to be able to explain it correctly. And my students are used to doing 9 times 7, 3 plus 5, and getting a correct answer and moving on. And so when I gave them the test, and this is the test, and this is one question with its rubric, they put the answer down and they did the math perfect. They got all their math points. What they didn't get was the explanation points because they're not used to explaining why stuff works. And so I gave them some guiding questions to take home tonight so that they could get their explanation points for their test. And we do a lot of, no, I don't think that you didn't get what I would consider an acceptable grade. And I tell my students up front, I have high standards in my classroom. If you don't meet them, you will get it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe next week. But you'll eventually meet that standard. And they get all the time they need. If they have to take it home 3 times, if they have to come in and redo it 4 times, if I have to continue to give them help, hints, I don't ever tell them the answer, they get that amount of time. And that gives them the success that we all like to see, because it's like, oh, finally. And the next time they don't have to take as long, and the next time they don't. But as you can see on these questions, not only is the math important, but question number 1 there's 2 things going on that are wrong. Jill did 2 things wrong, and the students have to notice both of those things. They knew the both things, they just couldn't explain how to do it. They couldn't explain in words. They knew the 2 things she did, and they wrote 2 sentences. Jill did this, and Jill did that. And here's what it's supposed to have been. But that wasn't what we were looking for, all of what we were looking for. So I gave them questions today about how would you tell Jill to do it? Because that's what we wanted them to explain. And it's a learning process for them as well as for us. It's going to take a while. But the differentiation piece, today we did powers of 10. And the sentence of the day was, I want the smallest power of 10 that creates a larger number. And the kids are going, wait a minute. The smallest that creates the largest? Yeah. And we took a place value chart that had the powers of 10, the place value charts all based on powers of 10. And they were able to see that the powers of 10 matched their place value chart, and they were able to take and find a smallest power, which is a larger than what they have, but it creates the next largest number. And they were able to do that. I had students at the end of class that were still writing on their place value chart, and I had some that went, wait a minute, I can just count the digits and I've got it. And I said, okay, whatever. Multiple paths. Engage New York is tough, it's stringent, its vocabulary is very, very specific, but is going to create better math thinkers, in my opinion.
It's completely doable.
It is doable now that we've just kind of relaxed and turned off the timer. And yeah, it is doable. It is doable. We wish we had more time, but we can get it done.
On your second page, you marked out on the top there.
Yeah, that goes with problem number 2, which isn't on this page. This is all problem number 3.
This is for this.
Exactly, right. And the top part that I put an X through is for problem number 2. That just isn't on here. I didn't want to give you all 3 or 4 or 5 pages. I just picked one problem.
Thank you.
Could I say something? I think when we had talked about this in the past as a board, I think, and even as a district, I think we recognized not only the newness of it and the challenge of implementing it, that it was not only going to be a challenge for the students, it was going to be a challenge for the teachers, challenge for the math coaches. It's just going to be a big challenge. And maybe you're going to speak to this pretty soon, but one of the necessities of a challenge like that, I think, is just communication and collaboration. The epiphanies of how to adjust in the classroom to what's described in the order of teaching on these pieces of paper.
One of the things that happened is there's K through 4 right now are having grade the teachers instituted those. And the 5th and 6th are looking at them. And we also have our PLCs, which are way more collaboration than I've enjoyed the years I've been doing this. So.
Yeah, we heard a little bit about that last board meeting, and that is a wonderful thing. It seems like it's necessary for mental health, if nothing else. Yeah, but then that first item on your screen there is maybe the rest of the story.
Right. And I'm Diana Denniston. I am a math coach. This is my second year as a math coach. And you're right, the collaboration across the district is tremendous. You know, in the past, it's been building by building by building. Each building did their own thing. But especially in math, we're all working together. The math coaches, for example, I'm at Victor and Ellis, but I've adopted a couple other schools to support and help out. A teacher will ask a question and I won't be able to answer it, or I want to make sure that we're all in the same place on that answer. So I'll offer it to all the district coaches. We discuss it and then we get back to that question and then we share that question with everybody. So, or the answer, the reply, the response. So we're all working together. It's amazing what we've done as a district. That this has brought us so much closer together. And parents plus teachers plus students equals success. And I think we all believe that and support it. So with Engage New York, we feel like the component with the parents hasn't been to the level that we'd like it to be. So we're working hard to try to make that better or a difference. So we've asked ourselves as math coaches, principals, teachers, what can we do to get parents involved? So some of the things that we have come up with is to have a newsletter for each module at each grade. The coaches are developing the newsletter. I'm doing all the 4th grade module newsletters, and then Dr. Dennis is having them translated in all languages so that all parents can understand what we're doing with each module. So the newsletter covers different aspects of what Engage New York, our curriculum, has to offer. It gives examples of problems that the kids will be seeing in the module. It gives parent help. It ties it with our Common Core. It gives models of what the kids will be using or learning to use. It explains what that module is going to have. And it's actually 2 pages, and it shows where parents can get more help, websites that can support it. And we're just getting this off the ground, so we're not sure, how effective it's going to be, but we're definitely willing to try, and then we'll revise it as we need to.
That goes out once a week or once a month?
As they start the new module. So, say 2nd grade just has 10 lessons in the first module, so they'll be getting their module 2 letters sooner than maybe 4th grade, who has 43 lessons before they start their module. So it's a timing, a newsletter that fits the grade level and the time that they have the new lessons. Any other questions about that?
That's wonderful, because I think from some of the parents I've heard, they want to keep their student engaged and encouraged, and what parent doesn't have a smart kid?
Right.
And so you want to bring that out in those kids, as opposed to being faced with doing homework that you don't understand as a parent. It's not the way you learn the math, and then if you convey that to your spouse and the kid hears it, or whatever the setup is at home, it tends to further the disengagement of the child. And so how can we, and I think that's what you're speaking to, how can we help the parents as teachers, I don't want to say get with the program, but help them look smart to their child and help the child accomplish the homework.
You'll also have the web address so the parents can go back and look at the modules and examples in the modules in the newsletter.
And something else I really should have put in here was a door, because every building has an open door. And we want the parents to come in, they can sit in the classrooms with their students, they can come at different times of the day and meet with teachers, and we'll do everything we can to get them active and understanding what we're doing.
You know, one other thing I would say, sorry
No.
for talking here, but based on what the parents have said, you know, we mentioned earlier in board conversation about culture. And, you know, I think we in 457 want a culture of openness and collaboration, and that's kind of what you've been describing. We want that with the parents too. If there was a survey at the end of that pilot of the curriculum last year, where were the comments of teachers that didn't like it? Or today, if there are teachers that don't like it or are struggling with it, there's an avenue for them, but certainly there's that reality of dealing with the parent.
Okay.
And
Mark, I
as
want to
we-
be really honest with you here. When we asked these teachers to do this presentation, they've done a great job, but we had no idea how they felt about this curriculum, so what you're hearing tonight is kind of a surprise to us too, so, you know.
Well, they told us last week, but.
Yeah, but we didn't know when we chose.
Well, they've done they're still doing a superb job. It's just in that environment of collaboration, we want to be sensitive to the comments and progress the implementation and the imparting of that curriculum to the child and whatever, and deal with whatever challenges you have. I think that's basically what you're saying here. That has, the lack of that environment, I think, has been part of the frustration.
So along with the newsletters, we're having a parent night that specifically speaks about math. So each building will develop that parent night that fits their building, but include in there the math information. We're working again collaboratively to set up a PowerPoint that we'll be showing in all the buildings, and each of us will be giving explanation to parents about our math. We need to have that done by September 30th, so we really want to talk about it now so we can ease the thinking of parents and just give them more information. And then as far as homework, we've had some people sharing about homework. We really have left that flexible, fair and flexible, asking the teachers to make decisions on homework. Some teachers are sending it home regularly, say every night. Nate talked about 2 nights a week. Some teachers haven't sent it home yet because they don't feel like the kids are ready to do it on their own, or at least at an 80% independence. So they're making those decisions so that the homework is a learning opportunity rather than a frustrational situation. Only send homework home if the correct example is on the sample page or attached so parents and students have a guide. We actually have teachers doing more than that. Like Nate said, he sends home the journal and the problem set attached to the homework. It is suggested that the problem set part of the lesson can be done in guided math with 1 to 2 problems left to do as homework. So they don't have to send home the homework piece, they can send home the problem set that is before the homework. So there's flexibility. Teachers may determine sources for grades. We're still out on the talking stages, how to determine grades. So we really left that up to the teachers. We haven't given them a criteria for grades. So we're still trying to determine what that looks like. But we've given them the option to do grades the way they think is best, and they could include homework. Exit tickets done in class could be considered a grade. And then the homework should follow the district's policy. but we're looking at that policy, it was last revised in '96. So we really need to think about, does that policy fit what we're doing right now with math? And then the last thing I have to share with you is that, Marcia, tell me where that's from.
Chief Council of State.
Council of Chief State School Officers.
It's from the chiefs.
With students, parents, and teachers all on the same page and working together with shared goals, we can ensure that students make progress each year and graduate from school prepared to succeed in college and in a modern workforce. So do you have any questions? And we can all address those if you. Thank you.
What I hope you take away tonight is, number one, how seriously the staff is taking the question of math and trying to do the right thing for kids. I also hope you take away how collaborative it's been. These teachers are representative of lots of others, and I think they've done a great job tonight. And the third thing I hope you take away is that we want to do more to get parents informed and engaged in the conversation. So any of us would be glad to answer your questions.
Does Engage New York, do they take feedback to tweak
Absolutely.
your curriculum?
As a matter of fact, Diana, didn't you, today, right?
Right.
But
I actually talked to, make sure I get this right, the Assistant Director of Curriculum for the State Board of Education today.
In New York.
For New York State. I called this morning and left a message. I had some questions for her from different things that I've heard talking to people. Whenever I see a parent, I'll sit down beside them and I'll say, well, how do you think it's going with math? You know, and I get their opinion. So I just had some questions that I wanted to ask, and I just thought I was going to try it. And she actually called me back, and I had a good conversation with her. But she said, one of her things she said was it's a living document, and they're constantly revising it. I asked her about, are they really using Engage New York in New York? Because I've heard parents say they don't use it in New York, and we're using it in Kansas, and she said that they weren't. She said, she did share that there's flexibility, that the districts, some are using it as their total curriculum, others are using textbooks, but they supplement it with the modules from Engage New York because the textbooks don't have enough. And then other districts have made different decisions. But this is from the state board, so she's saying that there's a lot of flexibility. They're constantly revising. I asked her about differentiation and remediation because that's been a big concern of ours. For, like, say a fourth grade teacher has students that are learning at the second grade level. So how are they remediating in New York? And she told me, she said that they're going to, they've got a team of teachers that are meeting this summer, and they're going to add more remediation to the modules. They feel like that it's embedded, but they want to add more so that they can support, you know, students at more difference, let's the extended levels, lower and higher. But yes, so, and then she shared with me that they posted some all 5 geometry modules and algebra 2 on there. So I was surprised and thankful and appreciated the conversation with her.
do they also have different ideas for assessments at different grade levels?
Do I have different ideas?
No, I'm just curious if she had.
I asked her about the data. What does the data show for where kids are going with this curriculum? And she really couldn't tell me because she said that's at the state board. You know, personally, I would need to talk to districts. But that was the only thing I really asked her about assessment.
Did you say that they have revised these worksheets since 2013, or well, she didn't speak to that?
She just said that, like I said, it's a living document and it's constantly being revised, at just as needed. And that's what we need to do. I mean, you know, we're looking at it and is this taking us where we want to go? What do we need to do to make it better?
Sort of do our own engaged Garden City. maybe.
Right, right. Well, and we do need to claim it for, we need to embrace it and claim it for ourselves and adjust it as we need to fit us.
Well, and if I could interject, they have done some work on it since we did our pilot last year. Because I was looking at, and when I was figuring out how many copies of everything I was going to need for Horse Good, I was looking at some of the modules that I had looked at as we were trying to figure out which module to do for the pilot, and there had been some revisions. More examples, finer refinement of individual steps, not such big leaps from one, giant leap from one example to the next. There would be an intermediate that kind of helped guide the students. And so they have been revising them all along, and they've done some even since we did the pilot. So what she said about it being a living document, they're getting feedback from either their own teachers or others, districts across the nation that are using it like we are, and they're making some adjustments to it as well.
And is this the state of New York, or is this a company that has the name?
Whatever the Engaged, it's the state of New York, who's ever putting out, wherever we get our materials from, it's Engaged New York, so it's the state of New York that's putting the materials out.
There is a company, but we aren't using the materials from the company, we're using Engage New York, which is the state of New York, and they had a grant from.
The National Department of Education.
This is one of those grants.
Any more questions or comments?
I do have a couple questions. I'm glad to see that we have the flexibility and that the teachers are taking the initiative to make the workarounds that are needed to make this fit for Garden City. I think that characterizes our district. We may take something from another district or from somewhere else, but we're going to make it our own. I did have a couple of concerns. When we looked at college and career ready standards before, the math topics were sequenced in a slightly different way than we had seen them before, that our students had seen them. Have we seen any issues with that sequencing? I think they would be more apparent at higher grade levels where students have already had some math already, where maybe there is some topic missing or they're repeating a topic that they've already learned, maybe in a different way.
There are some gaps, and so teachers are going to have to supplement. You're probably in a better position to answer this than I am, but there are gaps that we're going to have to supplement and plug in to make sure that students have some background before they can move forward.
But it is based on the progression
Correct.
documents of the Common Core.
But are we seeing that this particular Engage New York progressions are meshing very well with our prior math curriculum, the way that we did it before?
At Horse Good, we're noticing that because, allergies, sorry, because the Engage New York, the Common Core shifts things down. What we're teaching in the 8th grade has normally been taught to sophomores and juniors at some point. And so we're shifting things down. Students are learning higher mathematical thinking earlier. And we're noticing that in the shift from our textbook, which just is drill and kill, find the right answer, and don't think about how the math is done, we are finding some things that are missing, that we need to go in and build a new sidewalk and a new basement. And we are having to get that so that they have the background knowledge to proceed with several examples. And the teachers are finding ways to supplement that, and we share what all of us do. And not that our classrooms are identical, but we do find most of us teach the same way, and so we're sharing that material. But yes, we are finding some gaps in particular as we move particularly to our advanced students. the background knowledge from where they were as sixth graders, we're finding our seventh grade advanced students are really needing a lot of support in order to help understand the concept that's being put to them in the seventh grade.
And I think it's a challenge at those higher grades because you don't have the built-in progression
And-
that this was made.
And we made a comment.
Go back into another grade level. That's what my teachers have been doing. If the fifth grade is doing place value right now, there were some things missing. They went back to the fourth grade, engaged New York, and even suggested it.
And it was mentioned today in our PLC time that they're able to find materials that support the Engage New York, whether it's going back to the sixth grade module and pulling some things out, or just stepping it down from the example in the seventh grade module, adding a few more steps to help support, instead of having the step be 12 inches high, taking it a 4-inch step and making that a skill, and then taking another one, and then pretty soon the kids are stepping up to where they need to be.
Well, that's good because I think the higher grades get into some really challenging material and if you don't have the right background for it.
We mentioned today that it'll be nice in 3 years when we get the kids who have done this for a couple of years.
But that may take a few more years, so.
Exactly.
The other issue I was thinking about was, have we gotten any feedback from parents? Because I know especially in math is the one area of homework where your kid says, well, this isn't how my teacher told me to do it or taught me to do it. And the parents have a way to arrive at the answer, but it's not the same method. And I like the newsletter, but I was especially concerned at the sort of the first, second, and third grade level with that because we do have those first, second, and third grade ready programs, and so if we're not having the kind of parent help that we would want, because we all learned a different way than we're teaching our students, that it would impact them or cause them difficulties in meeting those goals for first grade ready or second grade ready.
Leanne, you might want to address the readiness issue. We have had some feedback, and it's kind of run the gamut. We haven't had a lot, and part of what we're wanting to do is to get more feedback, honest feedback from parents about what they're seeing, because that's going to help us know how to help them help their kids. So yeah, we've had some concerns, not a huge number, but we have had some. We've also had some people say, hey, this is really helping. So, Leanne, what about the readiness
At the
piece?
beginning of the year in service with kindergarten, I stepped in and they were having a discussion about counting numbers to 100, because that's typically what they've always done. They've had high expectations, writing numbers to 100, counting numbers to 100, but they're saying college and career ready standards are saying we go to 20 because we're going to go deeper with this. And so we talked with the group, and it was their consensus that they would like to change those to 20. And they're saying, we're still going to have those expectations for kids, but because we don't know where this is headed this year, we think we need to change this rubric score and make them, count to 20 this year. So that's what we did. We revised the rubric because of that.
Well, it sounds like it's going to affect a lot of different aspects of what we've been doing, but this will probably work out. Thank you.
And do you have any questions or comments?
No, not
Tom?
I'm impressed with where we're going. Somebody that is out in business or whatever, the ability to logically think through something. We're teaching that. Maybe I won't hear from everybody, I can't find anybody that can figure something out. So I think it's awesome.
Yes. Just on that last explanation, so we have a first grade ready rubric that we made judgments on kids last year, expecting them to count to 100, and if they didn't make it, it affected their rubric score. Now we're setting it at 20.
We're setting at 20, but we're saying, the teachers are saying, we're still gonna have those expectations, we're still gonna work to that goal, but this is what our expectation is going to be. And I think we've talked about that all along, that this will be a fluid document that we'll look at the end of every year and we'll make those adjustments, so.
I heard some feedback that maybe we're jumping out there so quick that we're asking kindergarten kids to do arithmetic before they understand their numerals. So I don't know what that might be unless, you know, it'd be hard for a kid to add by 3 if he doesn't know what 3 is. So that was just some feedback. That might be in this process of trying to teach sort of concepts rather than straightforward math.
Awesome.
I think, boy, a lot of my questions have been answered along the way. You know, some concern I've heard is that we spent a lot of time and money in the past in adopting tools like computer programs and to create stations, centers, I think you call them, for kids, for resources for kids to go and learn the basic math. But that, we can't use that. But what I heard tonight was we may be able to use that. We're just trying to figure out how to incorporate the curriculum with fidelity, and to what extent does that include options. The concern for differentiated learning and also kids at different levels, like even in special ed, how are we incorporating Engage New York with special ed? I'm sure that's got to be a challenge and part of the conversation.
It's definitely